In a world where power rarely bows, where leaders are seen as unshakable pillars of strength, one of the most powerful men in Africa did the unthinkable. He bent his knees, not for protocol, not for ceremony, but out of a profound need of the soul. But before we reveal the powerful story behind this moment that echoed across an entire continent, please, take a moment to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the inspiring stories we share, stories that remind us of the power of faith and humanity. The seat of the Nigerian presidency is not just a chair of power, it is an epicenter of unimaginable pressures, a place where the weight of over 200 million souls rests on the shoulders of a single man. For BOLA AHMED TINUBU, every dawn brought with it a new wave of challenges, a symphony of whispered anxieties and shouted demands coming from every corner of the nation. The economy, with its complex tides of inflation and unemployment, was a turbulent ocean that threatened to swallow the hopes of the most vulnerable. Security, a patchwork of conflicts and tensions, demanded constant vigilance and a wisdom that, at times, seemed superhuman. It was an invisible crown, not of gold and jewels, but of responsibility and of a profound loneliness that only those who have felt such a weight can comprehend. In this office, decisions made in a quiet room have the power to redefine the future of generations, to bring joy or despair to millions of homes. The president felt the pulse of the nation in every document he signed, in every meeting he led. He was the guardian of young students' dreams, the protector of the livelihood of farmers in distant lands, and the commander-in-chief of brave soldiers who risked their lives for peace. This immense load was not just a political or administrative burden, it was a spiritual weight, a force that could drain the soul and leave the heart searching for a refuge, for a source of strength that transcended human strategies and earthly plans. It was a constant reminder that, despite all the power and authority, a leader is, first and foremost, a human being. And it is at this juncture of power and human frailty that the need for something greater becomes not just a desire, but a vital necessity. Away from the spotlights and calculated diplomacy, in the silence of his own heart, the leader confronts the limits of his own strength. He understands that the wisdom to unite a diverse nation, the courage to face relentless adversaries, and the compassion to serve the people cannot be drawn from experience or intellect alone. There was a search for a divine anchor, a humble acknowledgement that to guide a ship as large and complex as Nigeria through the storms of history, a celestial pilot was needed, a divine hand on the rudder. And it was this silent, profound search that prepared him for an encounter that would redefine his leadership in the eyes of many. On a day that began like so many others, marked by the relentless cadence of state duties, the paths of earthly power and spiritual authority were destined to cross in a remarkable and unexpected way. The meeting was not planned with the pomp and circumstance that usually accompany presidential appearances. It took place in a space where the air was charged not with the stiffness of protocol, but with a sense of spiritual expectation. On one side, there was President TINUBU, a seasoned political strategist, a man whose life had been a long climb to the pinnacle of power, accustomed to commanding and being obeyed. On the other side was Pastor Jerry's, a man whose influence came not from decrees or politics, but from an online prayer platform that reached millions across the globe, a channel of hope known for its powerful mantra. What God cannot do, does not exist. Pastor Jerry's represented a different kind of power, a power not measured in votes or military might, but in the fervent faith of countless individuals who connected daily in search of miracles, comfort, and divine intervention. He was the voice that, every morning, reminded a global congregation that there was an authority higher than any problem, any sickness, any economic challenge. To many Nigerians, he was not just a pastor, he was a direct link to the divine, a man whose simple, powerful faith had inspired countless testimonies of change and transformation. His meeting with the president was therefore not just a meeting between two influential men, it was the symbolic convergence of two spheres that govern human life, the temporal and the spiritual, the government of men and the sovereignty of God. When their eyes met, something deeper than a simple greeting passed between them. There was a tacit acknowledgement of the weight each man carried. President TINUBU, with the visible burden of a nation upon him, and Pastor Ease, with the invisible burden of the hopes and prayers of millions he carried before God. In that moment, the titles and positions seemed to fade away, leaving only two Nigerian men, both deeply invested in the well-being of their people, but approaching it from different realms. It was in this space of mutual respect and shared vulnerability that the stage was set for an act that would defy all conventions of power and pride, a gesture that would speak louder than any political speech. Then it happened. In an act that silenced the room and captured the essence of a deep surrender, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, the man who holds the nation's highest office, moved forward. There was no hesitation in his expression, only a quiet, determined resolve. The world outside, with its demands and constant scrutiny, seemed to melt away, leaving only the sanctity of that moment. He was not playing a role, not putting on a show for the cameras. It was an act that sprang from a place of deep personal need, a recognition that, in the face of the monumental challenges he faced, his own strength was insufficient and his wisdom, limited. With a dignity that only true humility can bestow, he bent his knees. The fabric of his agbada, the traditional attire symbolizing authority and respect, crumpled on the floor. That soft sound, the sound of a president's knees touching the floor, was more powerful than any decree. It was a stunning visual symbol, earthly power bowing before heavenly power. In a world obsessed with image, with projecting an infallible strength, this act was a radical testimony. It demonstrated that true strength lies not in refusing to show vulnerability, but in the courage to embrace it, in the wisdom to recognize that there are times when the only logical posture for a leader is to kneel and ask for help from a higher source. The air in the room grew thick with emotion. For the few who witnessed that moment, it was an image that would be forever etched in their minds. The president's gesture did not diminish him, on the contrary, it elevated him. It showed a leader who was not afraid to be seen as a man who, like King Solomon of old, asked not for riches or power, but for a wise heart to govern his people. The silence that followed was a holy silence, a pause filled with meaning, where politics, pride, and protocol gave way to a pure and profound act of faith, preparing the way for the prayer that was about to be offered not just for a man, but for an entire nation. Pastor Jerry Ease, seeing the leader of his nation kneeling before him, responded with the solemnity and grace the moment demanded. There was no triumph on his face, only a profound sense of responsibility. He reached out and placed his hand gently on the president's bowed head, a gesture as ancient as faith itself, an act of blessing and of spiritual impartation. His voice, when he began to pray, was not loud or performative, but quiet and filled with an authority that was not his own, but one he channeled. The prayer was not a generic plea, it was specific, targeted, and deeply aware of the battles the president fought every day. He prayed not for Bola Tinubu, the politician, but for Bola Tinubu, the servant of the people, the father of the nation. The words of the prayer wove a tapestry of divine pleas for Nigeria. The pastor asked God to grant the president a wisdom that would confound his enemies and inspire his allies, a wisdom to navigate the treacherous waters of the global economy, and to find lasting solutions for poverty. He prayed for a divine courage, the strength to make difficult but necessary decisions for the nation's security, to protect the innocent, and to bring justice where disorder reigned. The prayer extended beyond the president, encompassing the entire government, asking for unity instead of division, a spirit of service instead of self-interest, and a genuine love for the people they were called to lead. It was a prayer that wrapped its arms around every corner of the nation, every tribe, every religion. As the prayer continued, a visible transformation seemed to occur. The weight on the president's shoulders, while not vanishing, seemed to grow lighter, as if it were being shared with an unseen yet all-powerful force. The tension in his face gave way to an expression of peace, of relief. It was a moment of spiritual recharging, a reconnection to the source of all strength. For everyone present, and for the millions who would later hear of this moment, the prayer was not just a set of words. It was a powerful declaration that the destiny of Nigeria was not in the hands of politicians alone, but under the watchful eye and guiding hand of God. It was a reminder that in the most difficult of times, a nation's greatest strategy could be simply to pray. When the prayer ended and the final "Amen" echoed in the quiet, the president rose to his feet. He did not rise as a man diminished for having knelt, but as a leader strengthened by a divine encounter. There was a new light in his eyes, a renewed calm in his posture. The act of humility had not robbed him of his authority. It had deepened it, rooting it in something more enduring than political power. That moment, though private, was destined to create shockwaves across the nation and beyond. The news spread quickly, not as a political scandal, but as a story of hope, an inspiring anecdote that transcended party lines and religious divides. This singular act of a leader kneeling sent a powerful message to all Nigerians. To a deeply religious people, seeing their leader openly submit to God was an affirmation of their own faith. It reminded them that leadership, in its truest form, is not about arrogance and pride, but about service and humility. For a country facing so many challenges, this gesture became a symbol of hope. If the man in charge was willing to seek divine guidance with such humility, then perhaps there was, indeed, hope for a better future. It sparked conversations in homes, markets, and places of worship, not about politics, but about the character of leadership and the role of faith in public life. Ultimately, the story of BOLA AHMED TINUBU kneeling before Pastor Jerry Ease became more than a news event. It became a modern-day parable. A lesson that no matter how high you rise, no matter how much power you amass, our shared humanity and our need for a greater strength bind us all. It was a reminder that the greatest challenges are not conquered with plans and policies alone, but with courage, wisdom, and sometimes, with the simple, profound strength found on a bended knee and a humble heart. That act was not a sign of weakness. It was, perhaps, the deepest display of strength a leader can offer his people. If this story of faith and humility touched your heart and gave you hope, please show your support. Subscribe to our channel so we can continue to bring you more stories that inspire and uplift. Leave your like on this video so its message of hope can reach more people around the world. And please share your thoughts in the comments below. What does true leadership mean to you? Your participation makes our community stronger. Thank you for watching.